Hello and welcome to another edition of Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. I am your Master of Ceremonies, Devlin, and I'm here with a brand new spanking episode. Brand spanking new episode. Yeah, brand new spanking episode. That's a totally different topic, but could be fun in the future. You never know. I'm sure we've actually talked about it here. I believe that was a topics teaserama, and it came up. But anyhow, no spanking happening tonight. Just seems like a weird line to say. Anyhow, it's my unofficial second Easter celebration, and I'm going to say unofficial because I did an Easter episode last year. It was my first specialty episode, and I realized that as much as I love Easter, there's really not a lot you can talk about Easter. You know, I can probably have about 100 Christmas stories, maybe even a few Halloween and New Year's stories, but Easter, I just have nice memories of it, but nothing really huge. So I decided, I don't know if I can really do a full Easter episode. So if you were looking for something totally Easter, feel free to go back and check out last year's Easter. But if I recall, I didn't even talk about that. I know I talked about movies I like to watch around this time of year, and I also talked, I believe, about suicide, because something very important to me, and we're not going to get that heavy. Well, I shouldn't promise that. You never know where the show will take me. But I'm going to start with a very lighthearted thing and something sort of related to Easter. Eggs. And I will tell some Easter egg stories here in this set, but before that, I just wanted to say just how much I absolutely adore eggs in general. You know, when I was younger, people would ask me what my favorite food was. I never could put my head on it. I'd always say, like, pizza or something like that. But one day, I just realized, while I was enjoying breakfast, just how much I love breakfast and eggs. And I realized that my favorite food in the whole world is eggs. I like it in every form possible, you know. So I started now when somebody asks me, and this comes up in conversation a lot. Okay, maybe not a lot, but it shows up once in a blue moon. What's your favorite food? I now answer proudly, eggs. And it's funny because at first they usually look at you strange, because usually, you know, people have exotic answers like steak or lobster. But then they think about it and think, yeah, eggs you can do a lot of things with. And as I said, I don't think I've met too many eggs. I've always said that eggs to me is like sex. Even when they're bad, they're pretty good. I love sunny side up. I love dipping my toast in. I love poached eggs, especially with Eggs Benedict and that hollandaise sauce. I love, you know, fried eggs. I love a soft-boiled egg. I even enjoy hard-boiled eggs, you know, that you have to do for the Easter eggs. It's probably my least favorite just because it seems like you just boil the crap out of them, especially Easter eggs, because you just have to boil and boil and boil so they don't break as much. But still, I enjoy them. A little bit of salt, a little bit of Maggi. My favorite thing is French toast. And I actually prefer my French toast more savory than with sugar. I know a lot of people put icing sugar on it. They put fruit on it. I actually put this stuff called Maggi on it, which I mentioned earlier. Some people call it Muggy. But it's a liquid sauce that you kind of use to enhance soups or stews. And I call it like a liquid salt. It's sort of like soy sauce, but not quite. You can find it. You used to be able to have to just go to Denninger's to get it, but now it's all over the place, and you can find it in many of your fine grocery establishments. It's something I grew up with as a kid, and it's always in my home. I've cut back down on it because it is very heavy in salt, but I just love it on my French toast, and French toast is probably my number one comfort food. I've tried to cut down because I know fried bread is not the best for calories, and when I'm trying to watch my weight a little, I say, well, I can just do this once a week. But honestly, when I have a bad week or a bad day, I can talk myself into, well, you know what, I can do French toast again. So I've had French toast this morning because, yeah, I've had a little Not horrible setbacks, but I've just had some bad things happen this week, and nothing I'm going to get into too much. Maybe later in the segment, but I'm talking about the love of my food life, eggs. Now, I always think it's weird. Like, I understand Easter with eggs, but I always joke about who came up with a holiday where hard-boiled eggs and chocolate are the highlight, because if you're talking about constipation and stuff, it's just like, these are like two of the worst things you could actually mix. Like I've said before, we don't actually have a lot of eggs in the house. We might get a little couple for a bowl, but we don't like buy the full bunnies or anything anymore. You know, we stick to the wrapped eggs, and they're so yummy, but we even limit ourselves on that because they're just too easy to just grab a handful and pop them. And I know you're doing that. You're thinking about it right now. You're probably looking at an Easter egg bowl that you have some, and you're thinking, yeah, that sounds great. Don't lie. I know. So I love those too. When I was young, we used to have a little bit of tradition. We used to dye the eggs, and I think we did it on Good Friday. And I was an artistic child. I loved to draw and color, and so I loved this tradition. And they'd make up the dyes, and you'd like mix the dyes up, and I like drawing. I like drawing pictures on it. I know a lot of people use stickers, and I eventually used stickers, and you could always get those ones that you could like, they were like an insert that you put over the egg, and then you boil water and put it in the hot water, and it stuck to it. I always found this to be kind of a cheap way out. But I actually like to draw on the pictures. I usually drew one of every family member in the house, and one of myself. And I love doing that. It was just something I did. Then I realized one day that I was pretty much, my father or mother would help me get the dyes ready, but I became eventually the only person to do it in my house. And then what would happen is we'd keep them out on the table. We wouldn't touch them until Easter, and that's when they were okay to eat them. And, and then before we ate them, we used to have Easter egg hunts. Now, my parents never, they never hid the eggs for us on, Easter morning, and, the Easter bunny did for the longest time. And, but we would take the eggs after, we saw what the Easter bunny brought us, and we would play hide the Easter eggs. My brothers and I would look at it for them, but it wasn't like something they did overnight, hide the eggs that we had painted. I guess they felt, because our Easter bunny never hid our stuff, he just always put it right on the table in a nice display. So I guess my parents thought, if the Easter bunny's not going to hide his stuff, why the heck should we hide our eggs? But we did do the egg hunt tradition. And then again, as I grew up, and I was probably way older by the time we stopped this tradition, because I always was a person, as you probably know from listening to these, I always like to hang on to my youth. So I probably did it way too long, and then finally I could just tell nobody in the house had any interest for this. So it was a tradition that was gone. When I met my sister-in-law, Christine, when we used to go to their families regularly on Easter, it's kind of something we don't do anymore. It's just, I don't know, as I get older, Easter's not something I celebrate. I loved last week talking to Andrew Hops, because he just was so excited about Easter. And it's really refreshing to see people still excited about Easter. When I get excited about Easter, I'm more excited about, I like seeing bunnies, and we do decorate the house a little bit. We put little objects out and stuff. But what I love about it is that, we just don't, I more love it because I know I have some days off. In retail, it's one of the few times you get 2 days close to each other off. Even Christmas now, you sometimes work Christmas Eve, and then sometimes you work Boxing Day, so that doesn't even qualify. So Easter, you at least have 2 that are close, even though there's a Saturday in there. Usually I'm smart enough to book that off, though. So anyhow, when we went to go spend it with my nieces and nephews and stuff, they taught us a game they used to do. And I never can remember the game, but it was always kind of fun, where you'd take the cooked eggs, and you would kind of hold them in your hand, and then you'd smash the ends. And then usually one would break and the other wouldn't, and then you were the champion, and then you'd move on to go challenge other people with the eggs. And it was always a fun tradition. And if we do meet up at Easter, my niece usually still cooks the eggs because she likes playing the game, and it is a lot of fun. And so it was a tradition that became something we did for a little while. As I said, Mike and I don't paint eggs now. We decorate, but it's just not a thing. But it's interesting how eggs play such an impact in our lives. You know, we always have eggs on hand, and you know, we'll have eggs for dinner sometimes. And I like that whole campaign when they said, you know, eggs aren't just for breakfast anymore, because it's true. You can use them in so many things, and they complement so many things. But I like hearing when I hear, like, families still paint eggs, or they show pictures on Facebook that they do, because I think it's a wonderful tradition. And, you know, even, you know, the egg hunts you still see. Coloring competitions also become quite, I don't know, you don't see it as much in any other holiday but Easter. I remember even as a kid going to stores and you'd get like Easter pictures, and there'd always be bunnies, eggs, you know, on there, you know, flowers. And you'd color, and then you'd wait to see who was the winner. I like, at least Value Village, we did that, but if you bring in your colored picture, everybody gets a toy. We have a big couple baskets that the kids get to go through and pick something they want. So, you know, we're really, I love that about it. But, I will always be a supporter of eggs. This year I actually bought some Ukrainian eggs. They're fake ones, but they're so beautiful. I've always, even as a kid, I used to love looking at Ukrainian eggs. I remember usually in school they would bring them in, and I'd love to look at them, and you could just look at them for hours. And so I actually popped into this Punjab food mart because I needed something, and I knew they would have it. So I walked in there, and then they had like they had a small Easter section. It was great to see because it was all the classic little dyes and stuff. It was like not like the fancy things that they come up with. They always come up with the new glitter eggs and, you know, swirly eggs and stuff. But these were literally just the individual packages that, you know, you'd get the little round pills, and then you'd put them in your hot water and make them. And it was so charming just to see that. And then they had all their old, you know, Easter stuff. But they also had these kind of fake Ukrainian eggs, and I just was staring at them. And they weren't very expensive, so I decided this year, you know, I'd buy 2 of them and we could display them with our stuff. I don't think that has anything to do with my egg fetish, and I wouldn't really call it a fetish, but I just love them. So this year we will have some of those eggs on display. I never ever thought I'd be talking this much about eggs, but I thought it was appropriate with Easter. And I guess some of you might even think, wow, he's jumped the shark. He's run out of things to talk about. But no means that is true. I just really wanted to do something Eastery, and I thought, you know, some of my tales of Easter's past. You know, I wish I had more memories of Easter. I remember we didn't get a lot for Easter, and I think that's fine. Now I see kids getting, like, bikes for Easter. I see kids getting... But I think I remember us we'd usually get a thing of eggs. We definitely would get a chocolate bunny, and sometimes we get a stuffed animal. Now, as we got older, I think we got a little bit more, but speaking of egg stories, one of my favorite egg stories is absolutely not mine, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling this story, but it is an egg story, and so it fits in our topic. But when Mike was a kid, he apparently got this gigantic Easter cream egg. And basically, I think he said he didn't mind the original small Easter cream eggs, but they decided to get him this big one. And apparently inside was almost like this liquidy substance, which would be the cream eggs that you have. And he literally had to eat it with a spoon. And the thing I love about this story was that the family was just sitting around and watching him, saying, "Oh, he's loving that. Look at him dig into it and stuff." And Mike was secretly getting sick to his stomach because he just kept trying to eat it to make everybody happy. But he can't even look at Easter cream eggs anymore in any kind of way because of the fact that it just reminds him of this. And he said it was just such an ordeal that I can't get over it, as in, he just sees Easter cream eggs and he's just like, the memory of having to like force himself to eat that just sourly sweet thing. And I don't think he'll mind telling that, but I love that story just because I always love when parents sometimes, are over the top with, "Oh, look, he looks so happy." And it's great to hear later that in your kid's mind, they were just absolutely had a different idea of the situation. I like that. It makes me remind myself that, kids are real people, and, just because you think that they're feeling the situation that you are, it's not necessarily true. But anyhow, this year there will be no colored eggs in my house except my Ukrainian eggs or any fake ones we bought. But I will probably have my French toast on Easter morning, because Easter falls on Sunday. Sunday is my tradition. It's a tradition I carry on because my father would always make French toast for us all on Sunday mornings. And I make my French toast, but he used to make it just a little better than mine. I still think mine are pretty good, but I think it's just because I'm used to it. But I sometimes think about how my dad used to make it, and it's funny when we take for granted things in life. This is something we did every Sunday, and we just expected it. And then one day it stopped when I moved out, I grew up, and I tell you, I would do anything to just spend a couple of minutes with him and be able to talk with him and put a piece of his wonderful French toast into my mouth. I guess that's a big thing about Easter. It's any of the holidays, you start thinking of wonderful memories of that. Thinking of my mother helping hide the eggs for the Easter egg hunt that we used to do. My father making French toast on Sunday mornings. That's one thing that we should be grateful for the holidays. And I think the holidays we have to embrace due to the fact that we take so much for granted. And I know there's people listening saying, "No, I do not take things for granted." But we do. We do. And even if you think you don't, you probably do. But we do tend to embrace it a little bit more around the holidays. So this Easter, by all means, reflect and enjoy the company of people, because one day it's not going to be there. Look around at the people who are at your Easter table, or if you're going to have an Easter dinner. Look at those people due to the fact that one day, maybe next year, somebody will be missing. So enjoy all the stuff. Put your phones down. Put anything you can. Enjoy the little moments. You can get to that the day after. You can get that in a couple of hours after everybody's gone their separate ways. But I promise you, do it. And I'm glad I ate French toast right now, because I think I'd be making more, because it's my comfort food. Anyhow, enough talk about eggs. I apologize if I made you hungry in that in any way. But we're going to change the topic. We have lots of time during the Easter weekend. I'm going to talk about some binge-worthy shows that I think you should check out. And we'll do that right after this. Welcome back. You're listening to Devlin's Pirate Radio Show here, the unofficial Easter episode, because we're not talking that much about Easter. But this actually talks nothing about Easter. But with Easter it's kind of a good holiday because you usually get a long weekend out of it. I know there's always people working, and if you have to, that's fine. But for those of you who have the 3 days and maybe not, celebrate as much as you do Christmas, that means you have a lot of spare time on your hands. It's a great weekend to just kick back, relax. By all means, if it's a beautiful day, go out there and enjoy it. But, sometimes Easter can still be cold, rainy, snowy even. And if you are stuck in the house, I've got 3 recommended shows for you to binge watch. Now, I'm guilty of binge watching, although I'm not the biggest fan. I think it's really a shitty way we treat television. We've got some of the best shows in a long time on TV right now, and the way we treat them, I think, is just absolutely atrocious. But binge watching has certainly become a part of all of that. But there are 3 shows that, there's a ton of shows I could recommend, but these are 3 I have chosen. Some of them you may have heard of, one you certainly may not have, but I think they're all worthy, and maybe they're ones that you want to check out too. And they're fairly new, so there's not a lot of episodes still, so that's what makes them doable in a weekend. But we're still talking multiple episodes, so you still need a lot of time. I'm going to start off with a show I think I talked about when I talked about DC shows, but I wanted to go in depth because it's just that good, and that's Daredevil. The 2nd season has just been put on Netflix, and I thought this was a good time to talk about the show a little bit more in depth. It stars Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio. There's a great cast. The names are passing me right now. But anyhow, Daredevil is based on the Marvel comic. So I don't know why I was talking about it in the DC universe. Forget what I'm saying. Anyhow, DC is a Marvel comic that came to life in a Ben Affleck film that I actually thought was pretty good, but many people hated it. And then it got resurrected in its own TV series. And I took a while to watch this. I was a big fan of all the other shows that DC was putting out, but every time I tried a Marvel show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or June Carter, there's nothing particularly wrong with those shows, but they never caught on with me. But when I watched Daredevil finally, I was very surprisingly engrossed. I thought it was just such a phenomenal show. And I know a lot of you are probably already poo-pooing this idea, especially if you're not a fan of superhero things, and you're doing yourself a disservice, because this is such a well-written show. What I love about this show is that it's on Netflix, so it's a little bit edgier, so they can go a little further with it. But, I'm not just glorifying, sex and violence. What I love about this show most is that the characters are so in-depth. I can't speak highly enough about this show, and I'm so excited about season 2. Just a little note, he's basically a blind lawyer who happens to know how to box and fight, and he uses his extra senses, as in when he went blind, his senses became even heightened, and he can use them to fight and everything. And he, in season 1, goes up against a crime boss named the Kingpin, although they never mention it. And along the way, he, makes more friends, makes some enemies, and it's just a brilliant show. Charlie Cox, I remember I wasn't too thrilled when they first hired him, and then after I just thought he was perfect for the role. I should always put my faith when producers cast someone and not make my judgment tell, but I tend to do that. But no, they did the right thing. This is one of the shows that I think the hero and the villain are so amazing. I found myself falling in love with the hero just as much as I did the villain, just because they don't slack in either. They develop the character. In fact, in some ways, there's probably more character development in the villain. He's evil, but he has such a sweetness to him as well, like a gentle giant. But when that rage is unleashed, look out. Anyhow, it's really sad that Marvel has said that their TV universe and movie universes aren't ever going to cross. And it's really sad due to the fact that I think Daredevil is probably... I love all the Marvel movies that they brought out, but I think Daredevil is probably one of their best properties. And I could see the characters easily cross into that universe. But you know what? They're building the universe, and I can't wait for season 2. They're going to be adding some other heroes or vigilantes, whatever you'd like to call them. Elektra will be making her appearance, and the most thing I'm excited for is the Punisher. Now, I'm not the biggest Punisher fan, but when you get someone like Jon Bernthal from The Walking Dead to play him, I am there. I was so excited, and I just can't wait to start watching those episodes. So, Daredevil, if you're in that kind of mood, I certainly recommend that. We'll move on to a different type of show. This has become a smash hit show, so you've probably heard it. It's probably the biggest of the 3 I'm going to talk about. It's a little something called Empire. This is a real sudzer, and I really love that. Mike and I love watching the old Dallases and Dynasties, but after shows like Desperate Housewives ended, we found ourselves, there's just no soaps. Now, every show has developing storylines. You know, we watch stuff like Grey's Anatomy and Parenthood and stuff. But just an all-out great sudzer. And what I call a sudzer is like those old primetime soaps where there's sex and intrigue and everybody's backstabbing each other and sleeping around. And I got a chance to pick up the first season of Empire. And it's basically the story of a family that is, you know, part of the hip-hop business. Terrence Howard, who I've always been a fan of this actor, he plays Lucius Lyon, who's the head of this family, and he's got 3 sons. He's got a very business-like one. He's got 2 very talented musically, and basically they're trying to put this empire bigger than it's ever been, even though it's already big. And one of the reasons for that is due to the fact that there's a bit of a spoiler, but you find out early in the episodes, so, you know, I'm not really ruining too much, but Terrence Howard's character is got, let's say, a clock on him, as in he's just discovered he has a disease that's not going to keep him around long. So he really tries to figure out which son would be best to take over the company. To add fire to the fuel to the fire is the term I'm looking for. Bring in his ex-wife Cookie Lyon, who spent the last several years in jail for embezzlement, and she comes back, and she's played by the wonderful, I hope I get this name right, Taraji P. Henson. And, oh my God, is she wonderful. Now, this show has got some rich characters, and the thing that's incredible is that because Timberland, who's a very famous producer, he actually helps put together the music. So the music is all top-notch. Because sometimes in these shows about the music industry, you can get some really crappy music. But because they hired a really great producer who's worked with so many people, the music is phenomenal. Now, one of the reasons I realized I liked this show is after doing some research, Mike said that this show was actually loosely based on the original TV series Dynasty. And as I watch it progress through season 1, I can see that. It's just a phenomenal show. It's a lot of fun. It's not like, dramatically gripping, like where a show like Walking Dead or, Sons of Anarchy had a lot of, well-written things. There's a lot of, camp in this, but the characters are just so delicious you can't help to get into it. All the brothers are very interesting in their own way, but I have to state Jussie Smollett, who is just a phenomenal performer and actor, and from what I hear, the seasons that I still have to watch, he even gets bigger and better. He is definitely a name to watch. And even if you don't want to watch the whole show, check out some of the music on YouTube, just because they've released a couple soundtracks, and it is phenomenal. But as I said, there's lots of camp, there's lots of suds. Just a perfect, binge-watching thing to put on, and you just get into each one. It is just such a refreshing show, but it's got huge ratings. So I'm obviously not, everybody knows about this before me, so I'm promoting it late in the game, but still worthy to actually, check out. My final show I'm going to talk about for binge watching is a wonderful show that some of you probably never heard of, and you might even take a few bit to find it, but it is definitely worth it. It's a show called Kingdom, and it's a story about a former MMA fighter who opens up a gym. And basically, once again, like, I mentioned in Kingdom, he's got two sons that one is just an up-and-coming young MMA fighter, and the other one's pretty much fucked up his career just by being an absolute wreck. And the lead guy in this is Frank Grillo. Now, Frank Grillo is an actor that started out on The Guiding Light. He was just soap actor, and then slowly he's been trying to build. He's done some right-to-DVD work. Then he was in the movie Warrior, a wonderful fighting movie that I recommended on, Second Chance Movies. And then basically he also did the sequel to The Purge. Now, I've always thought he has so much charisma. A very good-looking man, too. And it's nice to finally see him in his element, because Kingdom is just suited for him. He plays the father in this. This is just stacked full of amazing actors and actresses. Other people in this movie, Matt Laurier. He's brought it in everything he does. He was in Friday Night Lights. He was in Parenthood. Just a phenomenal actor. And in some ways, this show he's the lead. Even though the family is seen quite a lot, we kind of see the world through him, because he's just overcoming a stay in prison, and apparently I like themes with families and prison. But anyhow, he comes back and he's not ready to tackle this world again, but Frank Grillo kind of pulls him into it. Playing the two young sons is Jonathan Tucker, who again is an actor who has been on several shows and is just wonderful. And I think this might be his best performance yet. He's just so crazy and absolutely wild that he's a very different character. I really, really love his work. And the other one is Nick Jonas, the younger of the Jonas Brothers. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Nick Jonas is a really talented young man. He used to do acting, and a lot of people might not know this, but I'm a big Jonas Brothers fan. He was actually a lot of the musical side of the group. He did a lot of the writing and putting things together, and he's a very talented young man. He's kind of famous now because his pop career has finally hit it. He had two big hits with Jealous and Levels, and of course he became, a face of diabetes he wound up being diagnosed with diabetes, and then he wound up working out, and now most people know him because he's totally transformed his body. You can definitely see a lot of it in Kingdom because he plays the young son, and I think people are going to be surprised that he goes toe-to-toe with all these, more established actors, and an incredible just an incredible presence, a very sweet character that has this edge side to him. And I think you're going to be looking at him in a different way. I think, people always are like, oh, he's just a Jonas brother. I think it's time we go past that, because he has basically made a name for himself. There's two women in this, and there should be more, I agree, but, obviously it's a sausage fest being in Kingdom. That's what led me there. But what kept me there was the good writing. But the two women are strong. So if you're going to make, only have a few characters in your show, and hopefully that'll change in the seasons to come, make them strong. Joanna Going plays the mother in all this, and wow, this is not a glamorous performance whatsoever, but she pulls it off wonderfully, and it's a character who has a real darkness about her. But then again, every once in a while you see the sweetness, and it's just so refreshing. She actually doesn't become established in the series for a couple of episodes, but definitely wonderful actress. And the other lead actress in this is, I'll probably say the name wrong, Keely Sanchez. And I get girl crushes every once in a while. Everybody knows I'm gay, but this woman, I could watch this woman just talk or do interviews or perform. I'm not just going by her beauty. She's such a strong presence. You want to talk about women characters that are strong. This is one of them. She basically plays Frank Grillo's girlfriend, and basically she's young, almost the same age as her sons, but basically she's kind of their stepmother too, and there's this real family element, and when the mother comes back into their lives, she kind of starts rethinking of where she belongs in this. It's a wonderful show, very well written, and the fight sequences, although there aren't as many as you think, there's a lot of training sequences, but the fight sequences are filmed really well, and you really find yourself getting caught up in this crazy little world, and I can't even imagine where they're going to take us in Season 2. I know Season 2's aired a lot of places, but honestly, this is a show you should search out, and you may have to look for this one. It took me a hard time to find it, because even when they released it on DVD, I went to go buy it, and it turned out it was specialty DVDs. Like, you literally had to order it from the thing, and it was way too expensive for the 10 episodes that it runs. But then I finally found it a little bit cheaper, and I paid a lot for it, but it was worth it, and this is a show I will revisit. And it's 10 episodes, and unless you can get your hold of Season 2, but a perfect binge watching for a long weekend and stuff. So there you have it, Daredevil, Empire, Kingdom, shows I totally recommend, and hopefully I've turned you on to these. Maybe they're shows you've seen already and maybe want to rewatch again. Whatever the case is, I hope you get joy out of it. And if you watch one, disagree with me or agree with me, don't be afraid to let me know. I'd love to hear from you and say what you think. Like, hey, you recommended that show and it sucked. Or even better, if I recommended a show and said thank you for turning me on to that. That would be even nicer, but I'll be happy to hear from you either way. Anyhow, I'm going to take a short break, and then I'll be back with another segment, and we'll see you on the other side of this track. Hello, we're back, and back with our unofficial Easter special. And, yeah, it really isn't an Easter special whatsoever. We're just talking about whatever, but hopefully it's stuff that's interesting you, and thank you for listening. Now, last Easter, I actually took on talking about suicide, because I know around the holidays people can be a little depressed and stuff, and I know a lot of people talk about it during Christmas, but I took Easter to talk about it. And I got so many people thanking me for it. Yeah, I got emails, I got some phone calls from people who said it was really hard to listen to, but thank you for talking about it. Because I do talk a lot of fluff on this show, I'll be the first to admit it, but every once in a while I like to get down and dirty. Don't exactly know where this segment's going to take me, but this story has stuck with me, and I decided I'd share it because it does kind of bring up the suicide thing, but I won't get as heavy as I did last year. But suicide is something I think has to be talked about, because I think people, we tend to not want to talk about controversial issues. But I think we need to talk about stuff that's on people's minds, and it's a hard fact to deal with. But suicide is something that, it's not something that goes in fashion. It's not something that, oh, well, it's going to disappear for a while. It's something that's always there. And people are touched by it every day, whether it's attempted suicides or successful suicides or just people admitting one day, I've thought about it. I stumbled on a conversation, and it was basically a person. I obviously won't name names or anything. But basically they were going through a hard time, and they were talking to another person who was kind of consoling them. And eventually they got to the point of saying, we should get together and just have a fun night, drink, play games, whatever. And they both agreed that this is a great idea. And then the one said, I just hope you're not a crier, because I can't really deal with that. And then the person who was having the hard time said, no, I've done my crying, and I'm not that way, and I can't deal with those people too. I've actually eliminated a lot of people in my life that, you'd get together with them and they'd break down and cry. And this bothered me because last year I went through my hard time, and I do know that a lot of people probably just ignored me, or maybe probably unfriended me or blocked me on Facebook, or just didn't want anything to do with me because they couldn't deal with it anymore. Luckily, I had a great support group of people that stepped up to the plate. And just to make sure I was fine, people I even barely knew. But it really bothered me when I heard this, because it becomes more and more relevant to me that we're not willing to work at relationships anymore. Honestly, we don't. We really just expect them to fall in line easily. And once they get a little rocky, we either abandon it, or we just don't put any more effort into it and hope it falls apart. I'm not saying that of everybody. Obviously, there's some people that do find relationships sacred. I think this explains a lot when you see people are so much invested in, their pets now. I remember people would have pets, and they would still be part of the family, but they'd sort of still be pets. Now you see pets are not only part of the family, but it's almost like a love affair with them. And why? Because, pets give you all the love, but they very seldom give you the drama. Now, every once in a while you come across a pet that can give you drama. But it's an easy relationship. And I think that's what we look for. And I'm not saying those aren't great, but the fact that all relationships need to be worked on and nurtured. And as much as I love pets, and I'm all for pets and stuff, it's a relationship that's a little one-sided. You get all this love from the dog, you take care of the dog or the cat or whatever it is, the ferret, the weasel, whatever it is. And basically, there's no drama. You don't have to worry about them, running off, because you're totally in control. We become control freaks, People always go on about, oh, there's nothing like family. And I totally, agree with that to some extent. I, of course, am a big follower of family doesn't have to be blood. It's the people you invite in your life. And basically, but it's again, people, the family aspect is something you can control. It's we have no choice. We're family. Yeah, you still have a choice. You can like some of your family members, but that doesn't mean, you love them, but that doesn't mean you like them. So you tend to suddenly people will move away and they'll say, oh, no, we're doing it for this, not other things. But I just feel that we're so quick to give up on people now. I hear people saying, oh, well, I got rid of friends that were crying all the time or had emotions. And then these are the same people that'll go on Facebook and I'll see them and they'll post oh, we need to talk openly about mental health issues. Or we need to do something of all these suicides that are happening. Well, if we're constantly just oh, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm going to not talk to this person because he's crying all the time. She's crying all the time. You makes me wonder why the suicide rate hasn't been dropping. You know, I think it's probably because I'm getting old. Don't want to admit to it, but there was a time when we were more invested. But I think nowadays everything is so instant gratification. I think we've lost the patience of waiting or that, you know. It's so refreshing when I get to meet with a friend and they totally just turn off their phone and just, you're talking and you talk about anything and you're engrossed. But so many times I've gone out with people and they're constantly on their phone or being distracted. You know, people send a text and if you don't get a response within, you know, less than 10 minutes, you're already like, well, what's going on? What's going on? We should be like that. You know, I'm guilty of it too. I send Facebook messages and I want to hear as soon as possible, you know, but I've learned to wait. I can't even imagine what I'd be like with a phone because I think we have now got to the problem. And the thing is we're raising generations now who expect that easy access. I remember as a kid, we'd go out and play, and basically our stipulation was we'd either have a time limit or we'd go to dinner and then we could stay out until the, you know, street lights came down and then we had to come in. Unless you were at a friend's house and then you'd phone and just say, hey, I'm at a friend's house. Now it's not like that. We text the kids and, oh, where are you? Oh, I'm with my friends, and this and that. We need instant gratification. And again, that's why I think sometimes we screw up on relationships and stuff. Because a lot of times friendships are a two-way street. You need the two people. If it isn't, then it's just not going to work. If one person's holding up the friendship and the other one isn't, it's not a healthy friendship. But going back on track, and I knew I'd be all over the place on this, but we got to start getting back to caring about people again. We have got so easy, like, oh, all I have to do is post a meme or a meme. I don't know what they're called. But we just have to post something on our Facebook, and that'll make it all right. But if we're not living the words that we're posting, I'm even surprised if people even read. Like, I'm sure they read what they're posting, but I think they don't really. Because sometimes, honestly, I will look at Facebook and I'll see something post about, you know, oh, fake people, you know, people you used to trust, and then I realize that they have hurt me in a way, and I'm like, do they even read this? They don't even notice that they're these kind of people. And it actually kind of makes me laugh. But people question, why is the suicide rate so high? Because one, it doesn't matter if you talk or not. There's always going to be suicide. But at least when you talk and you open up the communication, you know, if somebody's committed to killing themselves, they are just going to do it. But if there's some communication, some feeling of love, you've got more chances of getting someone's mind out of it. When I was going to commit suicide all those years ago, when I really had a serious time, when I had my notes written, everything, I knew exactly how it was going to happen, I actually thought of the people that were in my life and realized, why am I doing this? I still have so much people who love me. And that in turn convinced me to remind myself that I had so much more love to give and so many more ideas and stuff. When I think of all the lives I didn't meet if I took my life, it really scares me. But what scares me now in the world is that we try to always take the easy way out. I'm not saying you shouldn't have pets. Have pets, love them as much as you can. But when I see people posting stuff about how, you know, an animal's love is how we should learn how to love people. It's not that easy, because an animal isn't really working on the relationship. It's just doing its instincts. Us as humans are not doing our instincts, because we are literally avoiding people that we don't want to help and stuff, which means to me that they were never friends in the first place. But also in that fact, you can't expect that you're going to heal somebody right away. You can't expect that you have the power that a few of your words are going to save the day. But they just might. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try. And I hate how quickly we will give up on people. Because why? Because we live in a society where we can just easily block people. We can unfriend them. We can just not take their calls. Not realizing that because we didn't face it. Like, I remember a time if you had a friend that bothered you or you couldn't deal with them being depressed all the time, you'd actually say, look, buddy, you're depressing me, and every time I try to say something positive, you're kind of, blocking me, and I can't deal with that relationship anymore, so we might need some distance. Now we don't do that because we're pretty much cowards when it comes to... And then, we block them, and, other people block them, and suddenly there's nobody who can talk to them. And one day we read about a person taking their life, and we're genuinely shocked. And then we get to wallow, because we're like, oh, I lost a good friend today. I haven't spoken to him in ages, but still a good friend. He changed my life. He did this for me, that. Oh, so stuff you could have probably told that person. Yeah, it might not have changed things, but you know what? You never know. I can think of several little things that happened in my life that changed the direction of me slitting my wrists open. I can literally think of people saying stuff, and it doesn't have to be groundbreaking stuff, just a moment that said, you know what, that relationship was pretty powerful. I meant something to that person, and I still have a lot of that to give. Because if I lived in the world that we did now, I might not be here. I honestly am going to tell you, I may have not have talked myself out of it, and I would have slit my wrists over it. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying you should hang on to poisonous friends, but I think there's different kinds of poisonous friends. I think there's friends that are depressed all the time. I don't think you should just run away from them. And then you have the friends that are always creating their own drama. They're not learning from their mistakes. These are relationships you should be backing out of, because these people are just doing the same thing over and over again. But the people who are talking about suicide are literally thinking about it. Some might be looking for attention, but eventually they're going to go all the way. I'm not saying you have to solve their worlds, and sometimes you can't. But we give up too easy on people, and we really shouldn't. Why? Because there's easier relationships to have. I can go make my own family. Hey, we've got a relationship now. I can go adopt a dog. Look, I've got a new person in my family who has hardly any problems. I buy some kibble, I walk it, wipe its ass, pick up its shit. But we're not willing to do that with friends. We're not willing to talk on the phone or send a positive email. Some people I don't even know, I actually send little emails to. I'll see that they're having a gig or something or playing music, and I'll send a little positive thing. They might be sitting there, well, why is this Devlin guy writing me? But most of the time they thank me for it, and sometimes it's led to some very nice friendships. Why? Because I don't want to give up on people. I think too many people give up on people. I'm sorry if this segment's gone all over the place, but I get emotional around the holidays, and a good emotional. But the other day, I did something that I was really upset about, and it upset me, and I actually started tearing up, and somebody said, you're too sensitive. And I actually said, actually, no, this world's not sensitive enough. It's not me. It's the fact that we used to live in a world that cared. I'm not saying the world doesn't care now, but the caring is simple. It's simple. You know what? We don't have to help people who are mentally ill. As long as we slap a picture of, Daffy Duck with a happy face saying, mental health issues matter. We need to talk about them more. Everybody knows that I'm all for mental health issues, but they don't have to know about all the people that I eliminated out of my life, because sometimes when we get together and talk about things, they cry, they get depressed, and it makes me depressed, and then I can't deal with it. Oh, fuck. If this is the future, we are in some serious, serious trouble, because it is only going to get worse. I think as we embrace more and more technology and phones and being able to get instant gratification, we desperately need to reach out to people. We need to go see them face to face. All through my depression, people kept telling me, get out there, go back, spend some time with friends, and they were right. Every time I did, it made me stronger. It didn't solve my problems, but every communication, whether it be an email or anything, always reminded me that there was always someone there to talk or listen, or just to say, hey, you meant something to me once, you still do. We can't lose that, and we are. And the worst part is we're sending it on to the new generation. They always go on about how, Canadians are always apologizing. Canadians are so polite. It drives me nuts when I hear that, because those days are gone. Yes, there's an older generation that still does that, but have you even hung out with the younger generation? They don't apologize. They don't treat anybody with any respect. Not everyone, of course. I've met some wonderful young people, and I treat young people the same as I treat old people, anyone. I try to give them respect. And I'm not seeing it as much as I did in the past, because one, we have teachers that don't really get respect anymore. Kids are allowed to just run amok in stores or wherever they can because parents don't want to punish them because they're being independent. You can't punish your kids because it's like, it's gonna emotionally screw them up. Well, you know what? Look around. Hang out with some young people and you will see that we need to bring that all back. And I know this has been a muddle, but you know what? I didn't break down and cry once. I thought I would. I might have a good cry after this, but it's Easter weekend and I'd rather go binge watch or go check out some movies or hang out with some friends. So I'm going to do that. So no crying this weekend. I'll put that off to another day. Anyhow, our unofficial Easter episode is done. I hope you have a great one. I'll be back next week. I'm excited. I'm going to do an all Batman versus Superman episode. Not only am I going to review the new movie, but I am going to talk about Batman and Superman and different things and incarnations that they've had over the years. I'm very excited. They're two of my favorite heroes, and I'm going to look at them both next week in an all Batman and Superman episode. Anyhow, have yourself a great Easter weekend, and I'll see you again very, very soon.